The arbitration hearing room was too quiet. Rows of chairs faced a single long table where 3 panelists sat with legal pads and water bottles. The air smelled like dust and paper, like no one had opened a window in years. At one end of the table sat Angela Reid, black, early 40s, senior project manager in one of the largest consulting firms in the state. Her hands rested on a worn leather notebook, its edges frayed, pages stuffed with sticky notes and folded documents. She didn't look nervous, she looked ready. Across from her, the firm's counsel shuffled a thick binder. Beside him, the HR director stared into the middle distance like she wished she was anywhere else. Angela tapped the notebook once, slowly. "Every date, every meeting, every word you said to me and about me, it's all in here. Let's go back to the beginning." 16 months earlier, Angela had been at Dalton & Cole Consulting for almost a decade. She'd risen through the ranks, first as an analyst, then a lead, then a senior project manager overseeing multi-million-dollar contracts. She wasn't just good at her job, she was the kind of good that made other people step their game up. The client list she handled brought in more than $30 million in annual revenue. But the first signs of trouble came right after the new division director started. His name was Mark Everett, white, late 40s, MBA from a prestigious school, proud of his open-door policy. Angela's first meeting with him set the tone. He glanced at her resume, then said, "You've got an impressive background. I bet clients just love your energy. Not your strategies. Not your leadership, your energy." Angela smiled politely. She'd heard the tone before, the kind that puts you in a box before you've even sat down. The first month under his leadership, Angela noticed changes. She was left off an email thread about a major proposal she'd been leading. When she asked why, Mark said, "Oh, I didn't think you needed the back and forth. You've got a lot on your plate." At the next strategy meeting, one of her ideas was met with silence, until a junior manager repeated it almost word for word. Suddenly, Mark called it innovative. Angela started jotting down incidents in her leather notebook. Not just the big ones, but the microaggressions, comments about her tone in client meetings when she disagreed with a point, being accidentally left off calendar invites for high-profile calls, having to prove her numbers more than peers with less revenue on their books. She didn't plan on using the notes, not yet. She just knew from experience, if you don't write it down, it didn't happen. If you've ever had to keep receipts at work just to be taken seriously, you already know where this is headed. Stay with me and hit subscribe so you don't miss how it plays out. The next quarter, Angela was assigned a new client account, one she'd been chasing for years. The client CEO, Lauren Kim, was sharp, decisive, and made it clear she'd chosen Dalton & Cole because she wanted Angela leading the project. But a week before kickoff, Angela got an email from Mark. "Due to scheduling efficiencies, I've reassigned the Kim account to James." James was a junior manager, white, 2 years in, still learning how to navigate client politics. When Angela asked for an explanation, Mark leaned back in his chair and said, "You've got a lot of emotional intelligence, Angela, but this account needs someone who's really going to push them hard." Translation: assertiveness from James equals leadership. Assertiveness from Angela equals too much. She went back to her desk and wrote the date in her notebook. By summer, the pattern was undeniable. She was pulled off 2 more high-profile accounts. Her team budget was cut without notice. She was excluded from a leadership retreat she'd attended every year for 6 years. The HR director brushed it off. "Sometimes we just need fresh perspectives." Fresh perspectives looked a lot like young white men who played golf with Mark on Fridays. Then came the performance review. Angela's numbers were solid, client satisfaction scores high, project delivery ahead of schedule. Mark's feedback: "You need to work on cultural fit. Some people find you intimidating. I'd like to see more collaboration." Angela kept her voice even. "Can you give me specific examples?" He smiled. "It's more of a feeling, hard to quantify." This is where most people either quit or stay quiet. But if you've ever decided to fight instead, you know, it takes more than just showing up. Share this video if you've ever had to push back when the system hoped you wouldn't. Angela decided to document everything formally. She started sending herself summaries after key meetings, CCing her personal email. She requested written confirmation for changes to her workload. One night, she stayed late to print reports for a client meeting. As she walked past the conference room, she heard her name. "She's just not the right look for certain clients," Mark was saying. Angela froze. Another voice, James, laughed lightly. "She's great for the diversity panel, though." The next morning, she wrote it down in her notebook, word for word. A month later, Angela was assigned to a special project no one wanted, an internal audit of outdated systems. It was a full-time assignment with no client-facing work. Without active accounts, her billable hours would tank, and low billable hours were the fastest path to termination. She knew the move for what it was, sidelining. That's when she reached out to Dana Morales, a fellow project manager who'd quietly left the firm 2 years earlier. Dana confirmed she'd been through the same. Pulled from marquee accounts, marked as not collaborative, and given dead-end assignments. "I wish I'd documented more," Dana told her. "Don't make my mistake." Angela filed a formal complaint with HR, attaching copies of her notes, emails, and performance metrics. 2 weeks later, she got her first written warning in 10 years for failure to meet team engagement expectations. It was retaliation, and it was textbook. She contacted an employment attorney. He told her to keep working, keep documenting, and not give them a reason to fire her for cause. So she did. She logged every interaction, every meeting she wasn't invited to, every account she lost to less qualified peers. She even noted when Mark complimented men for the same behaviors he criticized in women. By fall, she had over 120 documented incidents. The breaking point came in December. The firm held its annual awards gala. Angela had been nominated for Project Leader of the Year 3 times in the past. This year, her biggest client had sent a letter of recommendation. The winner? James, 6 months into the Kim account, which Angela had brought in. In his speech, he thanked Mark for trusting him with such a big opportunity. Angela applauded politely, then went home and opened her notebook. She added one last entry, award given to subordinate for account I originated. Pattern confirmed. In January, she filed a formal discrimination charge with the state's Equal Employment Office and the EEOC, alleging race and gender discrimination, retaliation, and constructive demotion. Dalton and Cole's legal team tried to settle quietly. Angela refused, which is how she ended up in the arbitration hearing room, the worn leather notebook in front of her. For 4 hours, she walked the panel through every entry, the accounts reassigned without cause, the meetings she'd been cut from, the subjective feedback given in place of metrics, the golf games where deals were made, the comments about her look and her energy. She wasn't emotional, she was exact. When she finished, she closed the notebook and said, "This isn't just my story. It's the playbook. And if you don't stop it here, it's going to keep being used on women who look like me." 3 weeks later, the decision came down. Dalton and Cole had violated state anti-discrimination laws. Angela was to be reinstated to client-facing work at her prior pay and title. The firm was ordered to pay damages and implement bias training for all leadership. Angela declined reinstatement. She took the settlement and launched her own consultancy, one that worked exclusively with women and minority-owned businesses. The worn leather notebook stayed on her desk, not as a record of harm, but as a reminder. Sometimes survival means writing it all down until the truth has enough weight to speak for itself. Stories like this aren't rare, they're rarely told. If this one resonated with you, like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The more we share these truths, the harder it is for anyone to bury them.